Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? It is Friday, June 28th. You guys ready for an update on some of the shenanigans going on in Clown World? As always, our illustrious in-house financial, uh, uh, what do they call it? Those whisperers. He's our financial whisperer. Bryce will be with us in here just in a minute. We had to share him last week, but we'll get him caught up or get everybody caught up on what he's whispering out of the insanity that is Clown World. But first and foremost, guys, a little bit of housekeeping. It's become incredibly necessary. We need to get people to regroup and get prepared on some alternative platforms as we start to experience more of the crunch of Bill C-11, Bill C-18, as they're queuing us up for Bill C-68, which is probably going to see me with my own private gulag cell. I'm expecting my number to be pretty close to Tiana Truthseeker, whom we all had an amazing conversation with last Wednesday. But yeah, first and foremost, guys, if you guys are on Rumble, please give this a share. Make sure you hit that little gray thumb up at the bottom and turn it green. That makes a difference for us on how many people actually maybe might get to see us. We're banned from Facebook, from streaming there. And then we have lgm.news. That's the home away from all of the insanity. You guys can see, I should refresh that because it's not just my shows on there, but there's a couple of us. And as we're getting ready to launch some of the new upgrades, it's going to get a whole lot gooder. Yes, I used the word gooder over there. But today, down to business and finance whisperer in-house extraordinaire Bryce Wade, who we got to share last weekend with some of the greater community. Give us a couple of minutes on that, Bryce, what you were doing and how that went, what you thought of it, some of the folks that were there, where we can find some more information on that. And yes, I'm going to pry you for dropping names and future guests. Just kidding.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was at the We Unify conference over the weekend. So I was there from Thursday to Monday, and it was a great event. There's some really good speakers, a lot of really good people, said a lot of really good stuff, myself included, hopefully, because I was part of one of the panels about tech and media, and kind of shared my thoughts on kind of the nonsense that's happening from that perspective as well, more than just from a financial point of view. But Zuby was hosting. He did a fantastic job. Dr. McCullough spoke. Ted Kuntz from the NCI did a fantastic job. He had a really good message. I actually want to read something from him at the end of the show tonight because I think it was really good and something that I think everybody should hear. But yeah, it was really, really good. We did a bang up job. I got a lot of good feedback from a lot of the attendees. Well, because you kind of know how I talk. So I think one of the I will say this though, one of the things that I really noticed out of this event is the people that care about freedom and the people that care about our future in Canada and all this sort of stuff. Don't take offense to this, but they're all old, and I'm getting old too. And I think it's a really big problem that the younger generations below millennial basically that are just kind of unaware of the threat that we face and the situation of the country because they either don't know or don't care. Either of those is bad, but being completely unaware of it is, I think, the worst. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that problem, to be honest, but yeah, it is definitely a problem.
But it's interesting. It's one of the things that I notice. It's the people that so far are understanding what's at stake and see what's coming, have a body of life experience, knowledge outside of the propaganda and the
Yeah,
programming. Those are the people that are kind of leading the way. But
yeah,
and we're seeing more of the nuances as identifying themselves as roadblocks, even within our own collective endeavors, across the board. And these are the things that are inspiring me. Is it's because of events like this that help some of those things, uh, get resolved or sorted out, because there's actually time for one-on-one physical communication discussion that can be built on. And I heard a really wonderful term today that I think has even carries a psychological impact. We talk about freedom fighters and fighting for freedom. um, Maybe we should be looking at it, embracing a little bit more of the Buckminster Fuller mindset and call ourselves freedom creators instead of freedom fighters. Who wants to be a fighter? Not everybody wants to be a fighter, but I'm absolutely a creator. I'm here using my creativity to fight. So, just how we approach everything, how we frame everything, even down to the discussions we have, get better and better and better and better with more and more communication and contact like this. Um, so this was one event that was happening over the weekend. So yeah, there was so many great people there that are going on and doing other things. So what was your takeaway from this event, Bryce?
Well, there was a couple of big ones, and there's a couple of people that came up to me and said, because I speak the way that I do, kind of just in general, but they really said thank you for making it very clear and concise and breaking it down into something that's simplistic and easy to understand. And if you bring up my screen for a second, I'll just briefly show you this. So this was one of the things that I I mentioned in our when I was speaking, is that this is what the pathway to change is, right? Because this is universal. Anybody can do this. Anybody has the ability to ask questions, get answers to those questions, take actions, and get results. And ultimately, you have a choice. And so, to reframe, fighting for freedom, you really have to take action to support and protect freedom, right? And the way that you do that is to not be a slave, to make an intentional decision to say, no, I'm not going to be a slave, and I'm not going to accept slavery for myself, my family, or my community, and then take the prerequisite or required actions to protect that. And I think this is one of the core things about this event that really shone through, and a lot of people appreciated, is that I now know that there's people that are working towards this, and I'm not alone. You should know by now, if you're in this community, that you're not alone. But just to reiterate, there was a lot of people that came up to me and was like, I came here to see, is there anybody like doing what's necessary and talking about what's necessary. And I try to always do that regardless of what I'm talking about, which is being authentic, being real, telling the truth, and having a purpose, right? And that purpose and deciding and choosing what are we trying to get to, and then ultimately how are we going to get there together, is, I think, a really important part. And so there was a lot of people that were like, hey, and because like I push this on everybody when I talk publicly like this. I'm like, it is not just up to me. It's not just up to you. It's not just up to our politicians, obviously not, or any specific group of people. It's up to all of us. Every person in society has a responsibility and a civic duty to be a part of the protection of that society. And I think that's really been lost because of our complacency and comfort in our society for the last 70 odd years. And so it's really coming to a head now. And that was the kind of the main point that I wanted to get across to people, is like, you will not survive this if you do not take action. Nobody is going to come save us. And every single person that watches this and everything else that I've ever said, you are part of a community in your physical location somewhere. And if you're not working to protect that community in some capacity, or at least trying to build community within the people around you, you're losing, right? They are trying to divide us. They're trying to get rid of us. And so the only way to fight back against that truly is to be organized and collaborative with other people around you.
This when I saw this and I was reading this and I was listening to you describe this, it was like it's like you were reading my mind from yesterday's show, because I'm going to pull up what you just basically created the antidote for, which was this par cycle that they engage in how they govern us. And this is their cycle. And basically, what you've shown us there is the way to use those five fingers and snap that wash, rinse, repeat cycle that they engage in. So
Yeah.
absolutely, this is the power of minds. Thinking outside of the box, looking at different ways, things, and identifying things, and being able to convey them is, I think, the most critical point the most critical talent, skill, or asset or resource that anybody has right now, and those are the people that we need to get more of, and get away from the insanity, silliness, and shenanigans that are going on in every way, shape, and form around us. Um, and I mean, this is there's a lot that we could dive into and dig into on that. So that's great stuff from the conference on Mondays. I'm going to be talking about this a little bit more on Mondays. We're doing more of a grassroots. What's what are people talking about at the leadership levels within the freedom creation community rather than the freedom fighter community. So this will be interesting watching how the communities digest, process, and use some of these things that are coming to light, in spite of and this is where we're gonna enter the twilight zone. So in spite of the world's greatest shenanigans, one of them taking place last night with this performance called a debate between uh, Joe Biden and
I, I heard somebody describe it as Cheeto versus Potato Head.
I heard yeah, I've
So
heard
funny.
so many different ways, from old man to con man to
Yeah.
versus con man to superhero versus swamp creature. Yeah, I have absolutely heard a lot. But the only thing that was running through my mind from about 4 minutes into that fiasco last night, I actually couldn't help myself. I went onto Twitter and I had to put a post up there and say, "I'm sorry, America." But inside, I was kind of going, well, now you kind of know how embarrassed we are here in Canada,
Yeah.
with the exact same dumpster fire going
Yep.
on up here in Canada, if not even potentially worse. But so when I don't know. So well, we've got some time here to talk about this. So did you catch the whole debate, Bryce, live while it was happening?
No, no, I didn't. I was out last night doing a bunch of stuff. I had a bunch of meetings last night because I'm trying to start up a new project, which I might talk about in a couple months. But I caught a whole bunch of like the highlights and kind of the reactions and what everybody's talking about, because the debate itself, like I kind of knew this was going to happen, and unless they like stuff this guy full of drugs, like Biden's a disaster. And like anybody that isn't a cultist that has two brain cells to push together knows that Biden isn't in control of the United States of America. Like only absolute lunatics or cultists or idiots think that is the case, right? And last night proved that the guy can't even walk, can't talk, can't put sentences together, doesn't even know what he's saying. He's old, senile, and clearly has dementia. Why is that person running the most powerful military on the planet? It's an absurdity.
Well, I'm glad you ended with the word absurdity, because that's probably politer and more kind than most people out there would give that fiasco last night. So when it came down to actually the debate itself, I was actually kind of surprised. Joe kept it together far better than I actually expected to
Wow, you really
him
low
to.
expectations then. The
You
bar
know,
was
but
so low he literally tripped over it and he still failed.
I mean, that's not, and I'm trying to be kind to the American people when I say it that way. I expected worse out of Biden. And I actually, to be honest with you, I expected more crassness out of Trump. He was far better behaved than I
I
actually
think they told
expected
him
him
just
to
like
be.
show up and shut up and you'll do fine.
Yeah, it was just yeah, showing up was a victory there on that. I think it was more of a kind of a playing chicken to see who wouldn't show up. And oh, wait a minute, dang, they both did. Oops. Ugh. But what actually surprised me, and still is surprising me, and although I can see it a little bit better now, but it still surprised me, was the level of evisceration that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party was apparently levying upon that event by their own CNN panel. It was the most savage discussion I think I've ever beyond anything I expected, possible even from mercenary media. They were, you know, and it's interesting. They, not to give them any more credibility, nobody came on and actually gave a source. Everybody across the panel, there was like 8 of them going, I love Joe, but this is
Yeah.
the end.
Scarborough is the worst.
uh those kinds of things, and pulling up all their sources, saying, coming on the camera and saying, my source says Joe has to go, we have to replace him right now. Every high level donor, every high level Democrat is saying Joe got to go, Joe got to go, Joe got to go now, not yet, right now, but right now.
Yeah.
And that, and it was across the board. Expect mercenary media to be the mockingbirds that they are, but I never expected an anti-Joe message across the full spectrum of the far left radical Marxist mercenary media. Did you see that coming?
Yeah, because like as soon as well, I shouldn't say yes, but like I kind of suspected that there would be something behind this because I don't believe for a second that they knew that this was unexpected. They were training this guy for a week. They know this guy. Like this is the thing. Like I've seen this, and anybody with 2 brain cells to rub together that isn't like watching propaganda media knows that this guy is barely even there and has dementia and has had for years. Like what are we even talking about? So they knew that this was going to happen, right? They didn't pump him full of drugs because when they did his State of the Union address or whatever, he was at the very least lucid and he could put sentences together more or less. So they must have pumped him full of adrenaline or adrenochrome or something, right? But like he was able to say words and he couldn't even do that. So they must have known that this was the case. And I think that the reason that they did it personally is that they want to get rid of him and replace him, because somebody else made a good point that I was watching earlier today, that like it's in the bag for Trump if they keep Joe Biden on. Like Joe Biden refuses to leave, and he's like, no, I could do it in 4 more years. Blah blah. Trump's going to win because nobody in their right mind, except for the literal communists or literal lunatics, is going to vote for this guy when he can't put sentences together. Like I thought George W. Bush was going to be the dumbest president in the history of the republic, and here we are. What it was 10 years later, 16 years later, whatever the number was, 20 years later. Jesus, 20 years ago, George W. Bush. That's crazy. And we have another candidate from the opposite party that's even dumber and even less coherent than George W. Bush, right? And that to me is mind-boggling, that these people that run the world are going to pick these absolute moron meat puppets to be like this. This is an insult to the intelligence of anybody with intelligence that watches politics, right? And this is kind of why I get so offended with Canadian politics, is because they just lie. Every single thing Chrystia Freeland says, and every single thing that Stephen Guilbeault says, and single thing that Justin Trudeau says is either a lie, moronic, untrue, inaccurate, or ridiculous. It's an insult to my intelligence for these people to be lying to me on the daily and say that you should vote for me and it's all good, like literally lying to our face. It's just, I've had enough, man. That was one of my big messages too, bro. I have had enough of being lied to by these idiots, bro.
And that's the source, the true source of my empathy or sympathy for the American people yesterday was
Yeah,
understanding that by the second, every last shred of dignity is oozing out of your Oval Office.
yeah,
There is almost no dignity left to be found, and the fact that he is still there and still has, Miss Wobbly Pop, Mop Head, press secretary,
Say
still.
that again. Wobbly mop head. Yeah, literally everything she says is stupid and a lie. Like I actually can't watch clips from her just because I can't stand her that much. It's just like watching
Yeah,
Christina Freeland.
it is. It is. They're all matches made in the Democrat, liberal, clone trooper factory, young full to the brim of young globalist leader programming. But there's a couple of comments here on the side there that I want to throw in there, and that's an unfortunate thing. You got a bad choice or a catastrophic choice at this
Yeah.
point. So it's not really looking good for America right now, which is unfortunately kind of the same boat we've been up here for 10 years
Oh
in
no.
stasis, right? And so we're gonna pop off a couple more comments here. Enter Hillary or Michelle O.
I bet you Hillary is just like, this is my chance to get back in there and win.
Yeah, that's Hillary's dementia coming out on par with Joe's at this point. There is no way in the world that I think the Democrats would push her up to the front. Although
Clown world, man.
she would love to get into the swamp pit with Donald Trump and fight it out with him, duke it out, and she probably would get out there with her little craggy knuckles and to try to take a stroke at 6'4". 195 Donald.
Yeah, well, she'd probably be like, all right, send in the boys, with the,
Yeah, it's time for another Arkansas
I
disease.
heard you got stuff on me about putting me in jail, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think as much as I think that the Democrat Party only has potentially two hopes. One of them is potentially Michelle,
Big
however you
Mike.
want to say that, Big Mike,
Big Mike.
or Gavin Newsom. I think that the reason
Just
they've
both
held
insane.
off this long is because they themselves know that they have absolutely nothing. And when they look into their tickle trunk and that's all they've got is Hillary, Big Mike, or slimy car salesman Gavin Newsom,
Yeah.
they're going, oh
Yeah.
shit.
So do you remember when Ohio, the Ohio train derailment happened, right?
Yep.
So they brought in Pete Buttigieg, which is like
Mayor
this
Pete.
smarmy nonsense guy that they brought in, just give this guy a position. He couldn't even handle that. Just show up and not say dumb shit, and he couldn't even handle that. And so I think they were grooming him to be, a replacement at some point, but he blew that so badly that they couldn't use him. And like they were throwing all these names out, like Jamie Raskin. Jamie Raskin's an idiot. Like all these people that they have, like, oh, maybe like what the hell's that girl's name? What's her face? Plaskett. Like these people, like none of these people have any sort of semblance of charisma, likability, populism. And one of the reasons for that is they all believe this insane far left, progressive, communist, Marxist nonsense, right? And they're like, when I was watching Piers Morgan, because he was doing a post-mortem on it, I was watching that earlier today. And there's this guy, Vinny, from the Valuetainment. He actually made a really good point, which I fully agree with, we have the same problem here, is it doesn't really matter at this point in our country or theirs who you have in that place. These garbage policies from these absolute morons are a death sentence to your party. If you come to be like, hey, I'm going to steal all your shit and then make you pay for it, me stealing it from you, that's not a good deal for me. And if I feel that and see that in my life, that you're screwing me and you're lying to me, why would I ever vote for you or anybody related to you? And what we just saw with the by-election with Trudeau is they got destroyed because like Trudeau was a part of that. Like I did not think that was going to happen. I think this point has to be made. This proves that there is still democracy in Canada. And I was really, on the fence of saying that we don't have it anymore. But the mere fact that happened at all, that switched, I think that's a clear indication that people got to get out there and vote.
Well, I would agree that the illusion of democracy still exists, but given the low threshold that it takes to keep that charade alive,
Yeah.
I don't have any hope in it actually amounting to anything. And at this point, it comes back down to the basic. At the end of the day, they still all. Um, March to the same song, just played at slightly different speeds, perhaps, in what their directives are and their party agendas are, and what they, what how much they'll be tolerated if they start going against anything that the meat muppet handlers, the ones pulling the strings, you end up with Doug Cheesecake
Yeah.
Ford
I wanted
firing
to
an
talk about
MP
that.
for talking to somebody that doesn't hold the same political beliefs necessarily. Well, that's at what point do we still call it a democracy if one individual like Doug Ford can arbitrarily decide who this elected public representative is or is not allowed to speak to? They did the same thing under the Conservative Party with
Yeah.
Michelle Leslin
Christine
Lewis
Anderson.
and the Christine Anderson tour.
Yeah.
This
I
is
haven't forgotten.
right.
Not happy about that either.
Yeah, so again, we have this pacification of the masses through the illusion of change,
Yeah.
and you know, it, I guess that's fulfilling the democracy. Different wings of the same mob. We have change.
No, yeah, no, and I somewhat agree and somewhat disagree. And so my kind of core philosophy and point in all of this is democracy is supposed to be one voice, one vote for one citizen, right? We obviously don't have that, but we have to get back to that. And more importantly, we have to upgrade past that because when is our vote? Who gets our vote? What do we get to vote on? How often do we get to vote? Who gets to decide if we vote at all? Like these are all much more important questions past does our vote count? Because that's kind of the baseline minimum. Does our vote count, right? And and to your point, I think they're screwing us in all sorts of different ways, which I'm vehemently against. But the point is that I think you still have to have a system where we do have a voice. Otherwise, we're in a dictatorship, benevolent or not. It's still a dictatorship, and I ain't down for that shit because I ain't nobody's slave, bro.
Well, it's so again, is the to me, I look at it and it's still the same thing. Okay, my voice changed the butt in the seat, but it's just the other half of the Jekyll and Hyde suit. Does that voice really count for anything? And this the reason I say this is because this person now got voted in there not because of the merits of us holding our anybody's feet to the actual fire. It was held. He was lost and won on a popularity contest that had absolutely nothing to do. I bet nobody that voted him out could even identify anything that the winning candidate went in for, except for the fact that the reason why they didn't like the candidate, and it's the same thing through all of our election cycles, which is why it's so important for us to have these discussions before the election, because
Yep.
while the winds of election season are here, their noses are open and they're paying attention after that day of election, and they've got their butt in that seat. They don't smell a damn thing.
Yeah, and this is kind of one of my core points too, is that you can't have a vote only for support. You have to also have a vote against. We should be able to vote, and on a yearly basis, we should have a vote every single year, maybe just before Christmas or something, or just before there. I don't know. It doesn't really matter what the time is really, but we should have a vote every year in our constituency. Do you support your candidate or not? And if there's enough people that say no, there's an election, an automatic by-election, because there has to be a way, a mechanism that gives power to the people to hold people accountable. If you vote in this way, and I'm telling you, and all of your constituents are telling you that if you vote this way, you're going to lose your seat. Well, now we have much more of a let's call it accountability. To making sure that you can't just go and like, yeah, I'm going to do this for you guys, and then vote in the exact opposite way because Pierre or Trudeau or whoever, it doesn't really matter who, tells you that, hey, we're going to be doing this regardless of the implications. And so if there's a non-confidence vote and your MP votes against your constituency, against the wishes of your constituency, the constituency could remove your ass. Like it's just unbelievable that we don't have recall legislation. Like we tried to do that with Gondek and a couple other people, and they changed the legislation after that to make sure that we couldn't do it anymore. That is moving towards a communistic dictatorship, which I ain't down for, bro. Tired of this shit.
There's no excuse for us to not have any form of representation, even at a one person, one voice level. Even if I understand the Canadian population would never accept a blockchain based voting type of system for voting, but there is no reason in the world why we couldn't probably in a weekend have a developer create a referendum style
Yeah.
blockchain type of system where it would be a person's responsibility to click A, B, C, or D, or send me more information and update the system to a governance and management system that actually reflected the will of the people. Even if we did something like that at the municipal level, that would massively impact every corner of the country. When it would come time to elect or actually vote, which is keep the ways we got, but people would then be actually informed of what they were sliding around in their back channels and under the carpet, and it would by nature of that input into minor events would expose a lot of that things. We wouldn't be in the same situation, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, man.
Real simple things.
Well,
It comes back to that ox cart. The boss of the company's come to, runs the company from his ox cart, but he's building Bugattis.
yeah, 100%, man. And that is one of my central themes that I like to talk about, is that it's clear that our system is not working. It's clear that there is corruption because the system allowed it to be produced in the first place. That means that the people that were guilty of that corruption need to be charged, fined, arrested, dealt with extreme prejudice, because I'm tired of not having people break the law and not get punishment for it, especially when it's stealing our public funds and destroying our country as a side effect of that. Second, the ability for them to do that in the way that they did it needs to be closed, and the process from which they did that needs to be fixed so they can't do it anymore. And third, the process of us, the people, having a more, I want to say authority, but definitely more power in removing people that are problematic, has to be there. Like cancel culture from the left is like, oh yeah, your freedom of speech, but not freedom of consequences. Yet they get freedom of consequences on the daily while they cancel other people for speaking. Like C63, and I think it was C63 that you meant in the opening, is basically a criminalization of free speech. If
Yes,
you say
you
something
might
on,
think about doing this, so therefore we're going to lock you up in your house and take away your internet privileges to make sure you might not think
yeah,
about saying something. That is literally Bill C63, which
yeah,
is literally the final nail of the four corners of the the absolute burying, North Korea style, Pol Pot style burying of independent voices. And there's no just saying, okay, I'll be good and go along with them at that point. No, 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 no. Anything that you have ever said, you will pay the price for. That's what Bill C63 is. The other three was a bill that the other three nails were C11, C18, and what is C59? Is the one that basically does the same thing against the corporations, which is what these nonprofits and NGOs like Diligent, we talked about a couple of times this week, are enforcing on the corporate culture. So these cancel culture uh, uh, bills becoming legislation and lawful, they're just the further they get down this pipeline, it's going to be easier for them to get Bill C63 than it was for them to get Bill C11.
I know, and this is why there has to be a pushback now. And you asked me earlier about what I got from the event. This is a core one, is that we have grown up our lifetime. We are potentially the last generation, or one of the last few generations, of knowing what freedom is. Right? If all of this stuff passes and all the other stuff I talk about, digital IDs, central bank digital currencies, microchips, 50-minute cities, but all of the additional stuff that was the legislation to silence people, if all that stuff passes, anybody that wakes up into this world will never know what that is. And that's pretty much what China has now. You live in a world where everything that you say, do, and think is under review. And if somebody determines that it is against what they want, you die. It's not like you get a timeout, like you just go to jail. No, you die. Like that's where they want to take this, because they want that power to absolutely control everybody and everything. No, the World Economics talking about like monetizing air. Like these people are insane, and they're not going to stop unless they're stopped. And so to get to that point, you literally have to speak up or do something. There's only two options. You either take action or you speak up, and hopefully collectively that there's enough people to speak up that can do something about it. But I'm telling you now, bro, if we like the collective we, like our generation, the people that are alive in Canada right now and still care about freedom, if you care about freedom, you have to be a part of this, because if you're not, you're going to lose it.
If you're not a freedom creator, you're going to be a freedom loser.
Exactly,
Um,
100%.
and so, all right, we've spent 37 minutes identifying some of the primary clowns in clown world and talking about the dumpster fires and the parallels between them. Let's kind of shift it to what that looks like from the other side of that coin. When people are looking at the financial sector, we're seeing more nations developing relationships with the BRICS, and this turning of the backs on our Western societies while they continue to hammer down on the war model, which I would expect is now in jeopardy. The permanent military industrial complex economy in the United States versus Russia and the Cold War thinking, after the last week for the Democrats and the liberals alike. What is the pulse starting to feel like from the financial sector right now, and what do you expect to see coming over the next week? Is the fallout, after effects, not knock on effects, repercussions, collateral damage, all of those things. They're going to be
Of
slightly
the
different,
debate,
but
or just in general that's happening right now?
since the debate and the Liberal Party's dumpster fire here in Canada, that has got to really have rattled the financial sector.
Yeah, 100%. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually agree with Kevin O'Leary, because he did an interview the other day that I actually agree with, because he called out Chrystia Freeland for being an idiot, which she is. Like, she's the worst financial minister we've ever had. And the fallout from this is the business community. I don't know so much about the U.S. because I think there's a lot of big money that's still moving around, sloshing around all over the place doing stuff. But I heard from multiple people, but there's a lot of shorting happening on the Canadian dollar and the U.S. dollar, because they recognize, the business community recognizes, at least the upper level does, that there's major problems that are structural, and if we don't turn this around on a dime, we're going to get screwed really bad. Like we've benefited. Canada has benefited from having a somewhat competent management of our finances for the last 70 odd years. Not the greatest, and there's definitely been problems in there, so I'm not giving us an A+, but better than other countries by a country mile, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the US has been benefiting and we have benefited from this, is that they were the world reserve currency because of the petrodollar. Well, the petrodollar ended on June 9th, right? And so there's going to be significant fallout from that. We're already starting to see that, but the big key thing that's happening right now is real estate is collapsing. Number one, that is one of the biggest things that is happening right now all across the Western world in general, but in commercial real estate specifically. I've been talking about this for basically a year. That is coming to fruition right now. And the other important factor that's happening at the same time is that people are out of money and they can't afford their ridiculous payments, because when they refinance, when they had, in 2020 to 2022, basically 0% interest rates, because it was like 0.25%, 0.5% roughly, right? If you refinance, if you didn't refinance at that time, you're coming up to your refinancing stage. So in the next year to 2 years, all of the people, and there's, I think, 50% of Canadians have to refinance next year. So if those interest rates are really high, they might be refinancing it somewhere in the neighborhood of like 4 to 10 times what they were paying before, because they were basically paying historically low interest rates. And if you have that amount of refinancing that has to go on a huge amount of debt, you're talking about a lot of money that a lot of people don't have. And if we also have, in parallel with that, a recession where people are losing their job and getting laid off, which is happening all over the place right now, while that's a recipe for a financial catastrophe. And this is kind of one of the reasons I got into gold and silver, is because I've been watching this and essentially waiting for this to happen for a decade. Because when 2007, 2008 happened, why did this happen? Okay, all of these things happened. Cool. There was a whole movie about it, right? But there was other stuff too. But there's systemic problems, and they didn't fix those systemic problems. They actually got worse. So in my mind, it was guaranteed that, well, we're obviously going to have another one of these at some point, and that's coming pretty soon. So I would give it no longer than next year. I don't know if they're going to do it before or after the election. I imagine they want to keep it after the election. So screw Trump if he gets in, and try to keep Biden in office, or whatever Democrat lunatic they try to replace him with before the election. So they probably don't want it to happen before the election. But ultimately, they might not be able to control that, And if things get out of control and the U.S. economy does collapse, like China is collapsing right now, and that's something that's not really talked about right now. That China, a big player in the world economy and one of the main drivers for demand, is collapsed, not collapsing, like it's in the process of collapsing, right? So that demand there is now not going to be there, and that was one of the things that really brought us through the 2007, 2008 fairly unscathed comparatively. There were still options. I got fired from my job and laid off when I was what I was doing at that time, right? And so when you look forward about 5 years, like what are we going to be doing to secure our financial and economic future? And none of the political parties, Pierre included, have any plan for this. They're not even talking about this. Like, how are we going to pay off our debt? How are we going to get jobs going? How are we going to ensure the economy doesn't collapse? These people are idiots. They don't even talk about this.
Well, they're certainly not identifying the fact that it's literally the double-edged murder sword with the capital gains tax starting to take effect just a couple of days ago. So anybody that's buying a property is going to totally get screwed, and anybody that's selling a property is doubly going to get screwed. So there is, at both ends of the transaction, it's a death blow for these markets, and it's Canadians themselves. The people that are trying to survive and navigate these transactions that are getting absolutely destroyed. I've been hearing from some real estate attorneys that are basically being forced out of business over this, because it's collapsing the markets before the deals are done, and they can't hold a deposit long enough to get a transaction made, because the interest rates, and all of a sudden by the time they're done negotiating, everything's out of wonk. Like, it's just absolutely insane what's happening to the market out of there. And this this sliver gathering wooden broom tester political imposter is trying to convince Canadians that our national credit rating and our economy,
as if that matters. So stupid.
Well, this comment says it all, as if that matters. A company my husband just worked for went from 500 employees to none, done just gone, and they work the oil patch. And now they're closing the Fort Nelson gas plant. This is the reality of it, and
this is a war. This is a war on our country and our currency and our people, and the people that are perpetrating on us are the retards running the show.
Yeah, and it's Canadians that are paying the price while they're continuing to take from at every capacity, extract every last dime out of the economy, and give it away to their promised pets that they're bribing to come here and live on subsidies.
And this is why this is my ultimate point. So everybody that's watching this right now, ask yourself, what are we going to do about this? That is the question. That is the only question that matters. If you have a family, you have bills to pay, you have goals in your life, you want to accomplish things, you want to go places, how are we going to live a life of thriving and what's the word, productivity, when all of our resources are being stolen from us, right? It's ridiculous, right? And the only way, it's not the only way, but one of the first steps to fixing this is we have to get rid of these idiots destroying it, right? That has to happen this year. I cannot see a world where we have to wait a full another year for an election to get rid of these absolute morons, right? And one of the keys to doing that, because one of the ways that this could happen, and because I was talking to a bunch of different people about this, one of the ways that this could happen is all of the premiers, all of the provinces could demand essentially an election. They could come together. I can't remember the name of it offhand. I think it's constitutional something or other. I can't remember the name of it. If you could remind me, I can't remember. But this is possible, is that they could be like, listen, nobody's happy. All of our people that we represent are telling us, you got to get the hell out. that is a possible way. And so this is why I'm going to be voting for John Rustad, even though I don't agree with everything. But like, I'm a strategic voter. I really don't care about everything a candidate has to say. I want the core policies and the way forward, because I'm a much more longer term thinker than most people. But one of the core things that we're talking about here is the saving of our country from the idiots trying to destroy it. That's a war. Right. And if there's another side, well, you gotta pick a side. If somebody's coming up to you, be like, I'm gonna steal all your shit and kill your family. Well, I'm on the other guy's side. If whatever side you're on, I'm on the other side, bro.
Well, it's these the warfare is this is why I keep coming back to it. We have to pull an Iceland. Short of a revolution, a
They got
violent
screwed, though.
revolution and civil war, what Iceland did is the only way out of this. And this is why they don't want some of these discussions. But I can promise you that there are things like legitimate constitutional conventions starting to happen across this country. And as this dumpster fire carries on with the denial of the nature of the gravity of the actual situation, it's very people are going to be blindsided, and they're going to miss out on the greatest opportunity in the history of our nation. If we pulled an Iceland and forced our actual rights to become a sovereign individuals and a sovereign nation instead of this de facto pirate mob control, pretending that we have democracy, the biggest, and it all boils down to jurisdiction and understanding, but that is literally the only get out of jail free button, the easy button under the term odious debt, because we have crossed the event horizon when it comes to our national debt.
Yeah.
Tell the folks out there what that means, Bryce, because that's going to make the point of odious. I'll explain odious debt first, and then you explain why that's the answer. Because odious debt is the debt of the criminal, just like the profit of the criminal gets taken away from the criminal, and the profits are used to cover the debts of the criminal.
Yeah.
So all of the debts created by the criminals in Canada could have their ill-gotten gains stripped from them and be used to cover said debts, and they would be held accountable in that fashion, rather than the trillions of dollars of debt that they're walking away with their pensions for. That's what we get if we were to actually seat a legitimate sovereign de jure government in Canada, and that would get us out of the event horizon.
Yeah. And so there's a theoretical threshold of about 130% of GDP debt to GDP ratio that essentially means you're insolvent. So let's say that you're making $100,000 a year. If you have basically $130,000 in debt, you can't pay that eventually, even though like with these smaller numbers, it's not as bad because the interest rate that you're paying isn't as bad. So when you work with larger numbers, and so a simple example is the amount of money that we pay on the debt is now more than what we collect in GST. So all of the GST that we collect every single year in Canada goes to paying just the servicing of the debt. That's not paying down the debt. That's just paying the interest on the debt, right? And so what you eventually get to, and this is where kind of the problem with the USD is that it's getting to the point now where you're paying so much for the debt itself that you can't pay anything else. You can't pay for the military, pay for healthcare, pay for all of the other stuff that we need in society. And that's why debt and interest is such a problem for society, and why Chrystia Freeland is such a moron that she didn't get long-term debt when she issued all of this $650 billion that they printed. And this is why I despise her so much, her specifically, because either that was intentional or she's incompetent to the nth degree. And in either case, why is this idiot running our country into the ground, right? I just can't stand how much damage these people have done to our country, right? And so what this essentially means that if we don't turn the ship around, and businesses are already leaving, getting shut down, and we're talking about the dissolution of the Western values, really, because what will replace them is a dystopian nightmare that I don't even want to imagine, even though I already have. I don't want to live that world because I am fully cognizant of how terrible and horrific it will be. And so to avoid that, well, we're running out of time. We have to have an election this year, and I think it should be a week after the American one.
So the event horizon is going too far to come back from.
Yeah,
In shortest, the most, layman's terms, and this is exactly where they are taking us. And you there's this is where again, remove them, not create a parallel economy. We need an actual economy, but we would be
yeah.
able
Oh,
to stop. We would actually get representation based on a lawful constitution that we would set. A couple other comments here that I want to really actually address. The mayors of Edmonton and Calgary should be run out of Canada. Give them a snorkel and PFD and drop them in the ocean. No, I would actually argue with that because they are actually guilty of treason legitimately. The
yeah,
mayors of those cities have sworn oaths to the strong mayor's coven in order to have the strong mayor's powers, which they use to supersede all of their elected representation rights and privileges. So this is something that people don't understand, is that these strong mayors, and there's 9,000 plus of them in Canada, that are all actually and legitimately guilty of committing financial treason against your municipality, your riding, and abusing their powers in the seats of government. So no, I don't want to run them out. I want them in prison cells. That's where they need to be moved to. So, and the 15-minute city thing, no, they didn't actually just declare itself. They might be official just recently, but it's
yeah.
something they've been working on for
Yeah,
a
Chris
very,
Guy made
very,
light of that like year or two back now, actually.
yeah,
But now,
yeah.
well, his question was kind of official. Yes, they did declare themselves officially. That was like a couple weeks ago, and they're one of the first. But there's most municipalities are signed up for that through whatever the name of that thing that you were talking about, the municipalities, which is essentially a World Economic Forum backed conglomerate of mayoral people that are just going like, hey, we're all going to do this thing together, and we're going to do it for the betterment of humanity, and we're just going to steal everybody's rights and make a digital prison for everybody because reasons. So
It's
stupid.
all about the ESG and the DEI and the compliance to
And
it, and
carbon.
even your language, and every company needs to be educated in order to maintain the accurate, reflective narrative of utter support of the sustainable development. And I'm going to keep hammering on these guys because these guys are the ones that are Scott Moe and Daniel Smith are actively being assaulted by and under. These are the language Gestapo, that enforcement agency,
C40.
that are that are literally rewriting the economic, re-engineering the economic do's and don'ts and permissions at the corporate level. So that is, those are the nonprofits, NGOs, lobbyists, and nudge groups that are actively organizing on behalf of these guys. So this is where the private public partnerships come in. These
AKA fascism.
Yeah, the C40.orgs, the 350.orgs, and the Strong Mayors programs. Maggie Braun's been having some amazing success with tackling the ICLEI program, which is unfortunately just one leg of an eight-legged table. So go, Maggie. We need to go after a few more legs of that monstrous swamp creature. It's like a
Yeah.
centipede. But ICLEI is definitely one. So we'll be talking to Maggie again soon and all that. But all of these things, every bit of suffering, every bit of criminality. I keep hearing everybody chirping about the foreign interference and treason with China and India. Well, why are we not using the same lens to look at Geneva and Brussels and Davos?
Exactly.
And
I say that
that
on Twitter
is,
all the time.
yeah, and we need to keep hammering on that because the although I'm not saying that China and India are not doing exactly what they say they're doing, but I guarantee you they are doing far less damage and treason than what these guys are. or the C40.org or the treason of the mayors and the strong mayors powers. Those guys are the ones that are actually doing the damage.
Yeah, and this is kind of my point that so another thing that I got from the conference, and I started saying this quite a bit over the conference, although I've said it before, is that you got to understand that evil has been organized for centuries, if not millennia. Good people are not organized, and this is kind of the problem in the freedom community and the people that care about freedom is everybody wants to be left alone. Like I just want to live my life and be on my homestead or like do my work and go home to my family. Well, people are coming to kill you, so you got to get organized with other people that believe the same things, because if you don't, we're screwed. That's kind of what it comes down to, man. This is a war for the survival of what we believe to be right, good, and true, and the families that we want and the future that we have. And we're to the point now, and this is globally. So we're to the point now where they've pushed humanity over the edge of population decline. We are in population decline now. So there's only a couple places on the planet now where the population is increasing. So we've literally stopped at about 8 billion people. It'll probably get up a little bit higher before it starts to decline significantly and precipitously. And the most important fallout from that is skills. Okay, so I want everybody to understand this very important factor. Okay, I don't talk a lot about this, but it's very important. So there is a certain amount of people that is required to maintain a skill and a knowledge base, right? So we are a very highly specialized society that you know one thing and I know one thing and they know one thing and everybody knows a thing that they go and do and make money for. But if that person dies or can't do that thing anymore because that job dies, there's a declining amount of people that can do that job and, most importantly, maintain that knowledge and skill and probably the technology related to it. So if we don't have enough plumbers or electricians, more importantly than pretty much anything else, that skill dies, right? And what we're going to face in the coming years, because of a variety of reasons, is who is going to be managing these things. And if we don't have a economic system that supports the management and maintainment of those skills and assets, we lose them. And if we lose them, we might lose them for a long goddamn time. And I don't want to go back to 1850 level technology, bro. That shit sucks.
The laws of nature will inevitably dominate, and supply and demand is absolutely a law of nature. If there is no food, you get no nature, and we underestimate the impact and the prosperity that comes with affordable and cheap energy. Without affordable, and this is where the source of the decline comes: is the assaults on our surpluses, the things that allow us to thrive. Life is great. Have 10 kids. Life is shit. Have no kids. And this is where 80 years of political crime, corruption, and treason has us. Is we're going extinct in order to feed the belly of the beast in the swamp. That was I don't know how else to say it. I already cap it all off. Last words, Bryce, before we plug out of here.
Yeah, so this is the thing that I wanted to end off with, because I think it's really poignant and I think everybody should internalize this. So this is the Freedom Pledge that came from, I think, Ted Kuntz of the NCI, and I saw this and I was like, this is fantastic, and this kind of embodies what I talk about when I'm like, you have to unite around something. You can't just be like, these guys are a bunch of idiots. We have to have something that we have on our side to say, this is where we want to go and this is what I care about. So let me just read this out really quick. So before my creator, my family, and my community, I declare, I will rise up, speak up, and disobey harmful and tyrannical orders, whether they come from a domestic or foreign entity. I will stand in my power and authority and reclaim my innate rights and what has been unlawfully and immorally taken from me, my family, and my community. I will resist any attempt by government or otherwise to divide people in communities from each other or to subjugate any people to discrimination or harassment based on ethnicity, faith, bodily autonomy, or freedom of choice. If the enemies of freedom come to anyone's children, my neighbors, my community, or my nation, I will resist. I will never surrender my rights nor those of my children and my community.
Until next time. Thank you, sir. We'll see you next Friday. All right, friends, family, friends, neighbors, patriots, and fellow hostages. That's another brilliant week of amazing truth and bombs and community and knowledge. And it's only getting better. I hope you guys are liking the 5 day a week format. We are moving mountains. And in spite of all of the abuse, I think we're starting to get a few more people watching and seeing our shows. But it's brutal and savage. So thank you for the likes, the subscribes, and the shares. We are absolutely dependent on those. Without people reaching us, nobody would ever offer to buy us a coffee or anything like that we depend on. And it's a great time to do that. So if you find value in what we're doing, 5 days a week now, and also 5 days a week on Substack. Everything comes out that we talk about the next day on Substack. So we're bringing the receipts, bringing you the news, bringing you the stuff that nobody else either is finding or noticing. But yeah, this is how we stay alive. Keep the what was it, the freedom creation going, and keep it free for everybody else out there. So I love you all. Stay Canadian, stay mighty, and stay fierce, my fellow hostages. We got this. Just maybe not yet today.
In times of global instability, soaring inflation and massive debt, gold and silver have proven to be unshakable pillars of wealth. New World Precious Metals, based in Calgary, Canada, is a leading international brokerage. We offer an easy, secure, and cost-effective platform for investing in gold and silver, including our international wholesale program and registered retirement savings accounts. Protect your money outside traditional banking with our physical precious metals, privately vaulted outside the banking system, at secure, insured exchanges worldwide. Gold and silver have been trusted assets for generations, with current projections indicating high returns. And with unprecedented demand from governments, banks, and investors, there are now shortages. Precious metals thrive during inflation, geopolitical instability, and currency devaluation. Sound familiar? Now is the time to invest in gold and silver, whether in your international investment account or by transferring registered retirement savings accounts. Experience the security of physical precious metals, combining the safety of physical assets with the flexibility of being like your own bank, offering instant liquidity and a financed line of credit. With precious metals on the rise, don't miss this generational opportunity to protect your wealth. At New World Precious Metals, we ensure your wealth meets its potential. Contact us today and our personal brokers will guide you every step of the way.